Pizza pour conversation à Cabawea. Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, 10 a.m., and it is time for Rum Shop Talks. Today, we've got a couple of things happening. And so I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of what we're doing today, and then we're going to hop right in. So, in 2 days, so February 22nd of this year, St. Lucia will be celebrating its 42nd anniversary. Independence, I mean. And so I figured that we would talk about one of St. Lucia's national icons, which is the coat of arms. I'm going to tell you guys all about it. It's actually pretty interesting. Next, we will be doing our usual February honoring of an African American history person, and then finally we're gonna end with our back to basics legal tip or tool. So let's get started. Like I mentioned, St. Lucia is celebrating its 42nd independence from Britain. St. Lucia was a British colony until 1979. You guys, I was born in 1981, so St. Lucia is just a smidge older than I am in terms of its independence. And I figured that I was like just kind of going through and trying to figure out, like, one thing that we can talk about with regard to St. Lucian independence. And I came across St. Lucia's coat of arms, and I thought it would be really cool because the coat of arms actually embodies the history and culture of St. Lucia. So as you can see, the coat of arms is made of a bunch of symbols. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm wearing my St. Lucia flag here in representation and honor of St. Lucian independence. So the coat of arms was designed by Sidney Bagshore in 1967, and it was adopted during St. Lucia's pre-independence period prior to 1979. And so we're going to go through each symbol, and I'm going to tell you what the symbols mean. Because actually, like I said, I found it very fascinating. So we have the Tudor rose, as you can see in the blue shield. So you have the blue shield, and in the shield has the Tudor rose. And the Tudor rose actually represents England, which, and then also in there is the fleur-de-lis, which represents France. And the reason why France and England actually show up on St. Lucia's coat of arms is because St. Lucia was owned by both the British and the French 7 times. And that whole history is actually Bonjour Tess. That's actually part of our national anthem. 7 times British and 7 times French. They battled for this land. St. Lucia is called the Helen of the West Indies because of this lengthy war between French and England. For France and England. Hey, Lovey, good morning. And because we ended up ultimately becoming a British colony, it meant that the Brits won. I don't know if I'm happy about that, or it's just history. And so St. Lucia actually has very strong French and British influences in our culture. So that is why we have the Tudor rose and the fleur-de-lis, on the coat of arms. Next, we have the torch, as you can see at the top of it, and that is the beacon of light, the beacon to light the path of the future. Then you have the 2 parrots. It is actually the national bird of St. Lucia. It's called the Amazona versicolor, and it is an endangered species in St. Lucia. Like I said, it's a national bird. And we have the motto, which at the bottom there, the land, the people, the light. I looked it up and tried to figure out why the motto is the land, the people of the the land, the people, the light. If anyone from St. Lucia is on there and actually knows the answer to that, definitely pop the answer in the comments, because I couldn't figure out why that is the motto. And there's also the cross between on the shield, and that's actually sugarcane, you guys. And the reason why is because it highlights the importance of sugar to St. Lucia. St. Lucia actually was one of the country islands that grew and processed sugarcane, which is why rum is such a big deal in St. Lucia. You guys know it. And finally, I left the most important, well, for me, the most important icon on the coat of arms for last, which is the stool. And the stool actually represents Africa. And most specifically, it represents the chair of authority, which emphasizes the African heritage of the population of St. Lucia. So as you can see from our coat of arms, St. Lucia has a varied and very rich culture, very rich history, and Independence is probably one of the best times to go check it out. There's actually on Sunday, and I'll try to post the link to that. On Sunday, there's going to be a talk about what it was like in St. Lucia around the time that St. Lucia was fighting for independence. Yeah, thanks, Des. And so I'm excited to look to actually listen to this conversation, because it's like I grew up hearing all about independence, but I don't know about the conversation and the history and the fight and of what came before we became independent. So I look forward to this conversation, and if you guys want to and you're interested, I will definitely post the link to it on my Facebook page, and so you can check it out there. And so this is our history on St. Lucia's coat of arms, and which also illustrates our history as a people. And as you can tell, I'm super proud of my country and my heritage. Next, we are going to flip the script a little bit and do our Black history presentation. And the person that I picked for this is, her name is Claudette Colvin. And the reason why I picked her is because, she was 15 years old when she, exactly, Claudette Colvin was 15 years old when she made her stand and became an icon. But you never really hear about her, because you hear about the person who came after her. So before there was Rosa Parks, there was actually, and 9 months before, to be exact, Claudette Colvin. Claudette Colvin was a 15-year-old, and she was riding a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And the bus driver actually asked her to give up her seat. She was sitting at the front of the bus, and the bus driver actually asked her to give up her seat to allow a white woman her spot. And she is quoted, Claudette is quoted saying that it's my constitutional right to sit here. As much as that lady, I paid for my fare. And I think that is so cool, to be 15 years old and be so bold and be so brave and so fierce to speak up against an adult, and to be able to, advocate for yourself like that. And she was arrested. The NAACP actually thought about using her arrest as a way to challenge the laws, but thought against it because of how young she was. And of course, we know that 9 months later, Rosa Parks rode the bus and took a stand, and she became the face of the Montgomery bus boycott. But I thought that, we all know about Rosa Parks, but I felt like we should learn about Claudette, because her story is fascinating. You guys, there's tons of stuff on her. She's still alive today, so go check it out. Go learn about this amazing 15-year-old that, for all intents and purposes, started this fight for equality on a bus. And so that concludes our Black history presentation for today. And we're going to move on to our back to basics legal portion. And the back to basics topic that we'll be talking about and covering is trust administrations. So last week we talked about probate, and I figured I would be remiss if I covered probate and did not cover trust administrations, because it's like if you have a trust, then it has to be administered. And also, so often I have clients who assume that just because they've created a trust, there is nothing to do. So I'm kind of busting that myth today with talking about trust administration. And what I wanted to do is cover I'm going to cover 5 of them, the most important things. that we do during a trust administration, but just briefly talk about what a trust administration is. So a trust administration is a private administration, I guess. How many times am I going to say that, right? Of an estate where there is the existence of a revocable or an irrevocable trust. Often enough, we are dealing with a revocable trust. And what happens with a trust administration is there's 5 things. Often, we need to lodge the original will with the court required by law. We need to inventory the assets, inventory and collect all of the assets that are trust assets, figure out what are trust assets and what aren't, and how we're gonna handle the non-trust assets. We also do appraisals of real property. We appraise valuable assets. We do date of death statements on financial assets, because we want to know at the time of death what those assets were worth. And then we do the lodge in the will, we inventory and collect assets, we pay any debts and file any tax returns that need to be filed. Then we do. Why am I not seeing my screen and I'm completely forgetting? Oh yes, we send out all the required notices. Required notices to beneficiaries, required notices to government entities. So we need to notify the Department of Health. We also need to do the Franchise Tax Board. We do all of that stuff. And then finally, we distribute the assets. And distributing the estate, we can do that in multiple ways based on what the trust says. That might be outright distributions to beneficiaries. That might be distributions to subtrust, continuing trust that were established in the actual trust provision. So that is a very, very brief, bare bones breakdown of what a trust administration would look like. And based on how complicated the estate is, and based on if we're dealing with a married couple where the first spouse passes or the second spouse, that list of things that we do is going to differ. But that's essentially what happens. And when you have a trust, some form of this administration is going to occur when a trustor, person who created a trust, passes away. So that again concludes our back to basics trust administration portion of today's show. I have a couple of exciting things that I wanted to make sure I mentioned for next week, so that you guys come check it out next week. So our very first rum shop was on February 28th, 2020. So next week, which is going to be the 26th, we will be celebrating St. Lucia's. We'll be celebrating 1 year anniversary of Rum Shop. And so we're going to have a little bit of a party. And also to celebrate the 1 year anniversary, we're going to have our first guest of the year. Greta Tucker is an African-American realtor in Dana Point, and she'll be coming on. And we will be talking about redlining and doing a brief history on redlining, but also discussing home ownership in the African-American community. So I invite you guys to come celebrate with me next week as we celebrate. I swear it's celebrate our 1 year anniversary, and to honor all of you guys who have stopped in and stuck around and showed up for an entire year of Rum Shop, and also listen to Greta and all of her wisdom. So see you guys hopefully next week for another episode of Rum Shop Talks. Thank you again for spending some time with me today, Friday. Have a wonderful weekend and a great week next week, and we'll see you next week Friday for another episode of Rum Shop Talks.